Okay, here is a magazine from 1993 and it's called Collectible Toys and Values. It's from America and it's a Star Wars issue. It's not entirely Star Wars, but it's quite interesting to look at. I mean, mostly it's black and white photographs. It's got an interview with Dave PROWSE and on the cover a picture of Star Wars figures. And this one came out in January 1993. And it's quite interesting to look through the pages. You've got all the Batman, so you can see why back in '95 the Power of Force 2 figures are so bulked up, because Batman was so popular back in those days, and Star Trek was big as well. Got a thing about Thunderbirds there, back in the UK. Then you've got letter page, and let's keep going. Here's the interview with Dave PROWSE. So it's quite interesting. 6'7", man. And he was, you know, a great, and still is a great, or the true Darth Vader. And other films he was in, Frankenstein and stuff like that, Return of the Jedi. So it's quite an in-depth article about Dave PROWSE. You can see how muscular he was. That's why he was the UK Mr. Universe. And then we've got the article about Star Wars collecting, and this is by LENNY, who publishes Lee's Action Figure News. And I think this is more or less the same article that appears in issue 9 of AFN, Action Figure News. And that magazine really got me into Star Wars collecting, and I think this is just as such a great article. And this magazine just cost me £2 on eBay, so you know, I mean, it's worth, if you can track it down, especially if you live in the States, it should be even cheaper. You've got a picture of the Tauntaun there, squid head. Then it goes into the Star Wars price guide. This is really interesting because we're going back almost 19 years now, and these are the prices. So here's sort of 12 back prices. Chewbacca $60, Luke Skywalker 12 back $75, Princess Leia Organa $100, Han Solo $140, Stormtrooper $50. So what you can do with these prices in today's day is these prices now are, you can times them by 10. So this shows you in 19 years, 20 years, the prices have gone up so much for these little vintage figures. And you know, this is what I really collected intensely back in those days, 93, 94. So it may appear like I've got a big collection, but in those days, if you look at the prices, and then if you look at how much they were on for Jedi figures, you know, even back in those days, the Empire figures are slightly harder to find, but if you look at Jedi figures, you've got Bib Fortuna $10, Ree $10, and you know, back in London, you could pick those figures up for £8, £9. You know, so, and then with the second release of the Jedi figures, the 84 ones, they tend to be more common on tri-logo cards in the UK, so that's more or less, those ones are that set I have are more the tri-logo cards, whereas the first lot of Jedi cards were more either Palatoy or Kenner cards. But in those days you could get like Meccano cards, Return of the Jedi, you know, and you know how much those ones go for. Here's the Anakin Skywalker tri-logo. Still an easy find. If you wanted to get a carded Anakin, this is the way to do it, because the Power of the Force Anakin is worth more than the Yak Face. But in those days, back in '93, the Anakin Skywalker was priced on Power of the Force card at $100. The Luke Skywalker Stormtrooper was $60 carded. Amana Man $25, Yak Face $200. So back in those days, Yak Face was worth more, $200, but now it's the other way around. Anakin is worth more on Power of the Force card. Here's the Yak Face and Power of the Force card. That's a Canadian card. That's the only way you can get on Power of the Force, unless you go for tri-logo. All the Droids figures, Kia Mole $10, Boba Fett $60 on the Droids card. You know, you're talking much more, especially if it's graded these days. Then you've got all the other accessories there. You've got TIE Fighter, you know, Play-Doh. This magazine is just fantastic. It's a real treasure trove, and sort of takes you back into time. Then we've got stuff about the black hole. I managed to get a black hole sentry, I think either last year or the year before. That was quite nice. And then we've got Rocket Fireball XL5, so if you're British you should know what this is, if you're sort of my generation. Then we've got on the Playmate Star Trek. These were the big things in those days. Terminator 2 doll, Terminator figures there, prices for figures, so you know, Battlestar Galactica figures back in those days were $20 from 1978, you know. And his listing for more just generic sci-fi stuff, rockets from the 50s and 60s, you know, tin toys, great stuff. This magazine is really a really nice magazine. And then we go to something that's specifically American Lionel, which we didn't really get in the UK. And then we got G.I. Joe, Action Man, trading cards. Okay, and then more on trading cards, price guide for trading cards, price guides for Star Wars trading cards, more adverts. Here's the sort of, if you collected comics at the time, you know about the death of Superman, so you've got the memorial issue. And on the back of this you've got the advert for the Playmate Next Generation Enterprise and other stuff in the Playmates range. So this is a really good magazine. I thoroughly recommend that you try and track this down if you live in the States. Even in the UK, it'd be harder to find in the UK. Another great magazine is the Lee's AFA Action Figure News issue 9, which is that is the magazine that just blew my mind and got me totally into Star Wars collecting. So check it out.
Armed photon torpedoes. Resume course to our next destination, Mr. Sutter. This is Captain James Kirk of the USS Enterprise. This is Uhura, open a channel to all decks. Security alert to all decks. Kirk out. Kirk Engineering, Mr. Scott, report.
Okay, here we've got the Marvel Star Wars illustrated comics version of A New Hope, and this came out about 1978. Really nice cover. Amazingly, it's really small compared to the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi comic versions. So, you know, that's how small it is. I've got quite big hands, but you know. Anyway, so this is the UK version published by Sphere, and it's very similar to the US version. Like, pages are a bit brown. Excellent. 1977-78. It's got a foreword by Stan Lee. Then a foreword prefaced by Roy Thomas, chapter 1. So it's just reprints the old, the Marvel US comics with the cover there, and then the actual story in black and white. So, which is no big deal for the UK, because you know the UK weekly comics were in black and white, and you know, everyone knows these comics if you're into vintage Star Wars. And if you're not, you should try and get these comics, or get this magazine. It wasn't at all expensive. Back in the day it cost 75p. Australian price was $2.50, New Zealand $2.50, Era 82 pence, and Malta 80 cents. So really nice little volume. Love the cover, and you know, very cheap. So you know, it's a cheap way to get the original Star Wars comic in a small complete volume. This should cost you no more than £4 on eBay, £5 at the most. So track it down.
on another planet.
But that's all that existed for the scene. It was a dumb old monophonic recording of the actor. I mean, now, of course, the actor is most of the scene and is the most important part of the scene. But over the course of the better part of a day, by adding the Treadwell droid, which is the droid that Luke is working with, his voice, his movements, working on the moisture evaporator, Luke's footsteps, wind, music, etc., 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 the scene develops. Now that's a case where sound works very well.
Hey, Treadwell, come hold this junction plate in place while I torque it down, will you? That's it. That ought to do it. Now, let's give this old relic a try. Nothing. Oh, boy, how does Uncle Owen expect me to keep these junk heaps running? Here, Treadwell, clamp these two leads together while I splice them. No, you idiot. Will you use your insulated arm? Release! Release! Back off! What I wouldn't give to be on another planet. Any planet.
That was very tedious. I mean, that scene lasts maybe a minute and 20 seconds, and it took a day to put it together. Not to record it, but just to put it together from the pieces. That's probably, most people might define that as being tedious. Ultimately, I love it, especially if you can stand back, if over the course of the project you can stand back and say, yeah, that works okay, and sort of smile about it, then it's really worth doing.
You maniac, where are my macro binoculars? Well, I know I left them in there someplace. Ah, here they are. Now, let's see. Yeah. There's two ships out there, all right. Two of them at least. And they're firing on each other. Well, it's incredible. Boy, they're really going at it out there. Come on, Treadwell. Get yourself over to the land speeder. I've got to get into Anchorhead and tell Fixer about this. Well, get it in gear, will ya? Okay, stay put then. I'll pick you up on the way home.
We're really working with absolutely superb material, and I think are able to create, visual pictures, honestly, that are really extraordinary. I mean, have a high degree of richness and detail. And in terms of high fidelity listening, I mean, we're talking about hopefully people at any rate listening in stereo, perhaps listening with headphones, and certainly listening on very sophisticated equipment. I mean, it will reward that kind of attention because it's getting that kind of attention in terms of its production. We're spending an immense amount of time on that because we feel it's important, because we feel the standards have already been established, and it's our responsibility to meet them.
Director John Madden. Ben Burt, the sound designer.
Obviously, radio drama has a lot to compete with, and people are so accustomed, to television and films and whatever that to make approaches to an audience with a dramatic presentation which is strictly sound is unusual. The potential for radio drama would depend on the development of a style which is not like the older radio dramas used to be, and not just an imitation of the soundtracks of movies, as if you're just playing a movie without the bulb and the projector on, but coming up with a very involving way of engaging the audience's attention. I think this radio drama has that potential.
Overall, the most important thing that I think I would hope that it will bring about is to really awaken people to the idea of what radio can do with the dramatic form, particularly, of what